Hello everyone and welcome. Today, instead of doing a scrapbook process video where you get to see my hands put together a project or a card making video, I'm going to run through a few things that I do when I'm designing in Design Space on my Cricut machine, where I use the pen in my Cricut machine to draw lines around shapes or inside shapes and actually on letters as well. I've had a few requests asking me to show this. Once you've got the hang of doing this, it really becomes second nature, and I love that we can draw with a Cricut pen straight onto a shape. It draws first and then it cuts it out. But there are a couple of steps that you need to do. You can use whatever shape you like. I'll show you with a circle to start with. If you click on shapes over here and the circle, it'll put a circle in for you. And I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. I'm going to hide these two elements here so that you don't see them, and I'll just work on the circle to start with. And I'll make this fairly large on my screen so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to change this to a light grey just so that it's easier for you to see. Now there are two ways of doing this when you're working with a shape, as long as it is all nice and equal all the way around. A circle works well, a square works well. You can just duplicate this and size it down and then center it over the top of each other. I'm going to show you what I think is the long way of doing this. And then I'm going to just make this one a different color so that you can see I've got my base layer, the gray layer, and then I've put another circle on top. And if I just send this off to make it, it's going to cut two circles. But what I want to do with the one that's on the inside is actually make it into a line. Now I can do this on any shape at all. I can just go up to the operation up here and click on that, and it drops down a little menu, and I can change it to pen. And then I can go through and I can actually select what type of pen. There's a whole heap of colors and everything that you can get with Cricut pens, and there are different types of pens that you can get. There's extra fine point pens now, gel pens, glitter gel pens, markers. For my purposes, I'm just going to go with the fine point 0.4mm one, and I'm just going to select black. That's my go-to color. Now if I send this off to make it without doing anything else, what I'm going to get is a drawn circle on one mat and then my cutout circle on another. So it's not going to put this pen line on top of my mat. So I'm just going to cancel this, and then if I select both elements, you might think that you could group them together. So I'll just show you what happens when you group them. When you press Make It, exactly the same thing happens. It's a grouped element, just like you would if you were grouping together layers on a title. They might be red and black and white. It will still sort it into those three different mats. So what Cricut is doing is saying, here is a draw function, but it's on its own, and then this one is the circle. So what I need to do, instead of having this grouped, I'm just going to ungroup it for now. I need to attach these two pieces together. So I've selected both of them. I'm selecting attach, and when I send it off to make it, here is my grey circle that's going to cut out, and on the inside section, that is the line that's going to draw. I'm using a Mac for the purposes of this recording. I know that on a PC, this will look exactly the same. I'm not sure about from your phone or from a device like an iPad. When you do send things off to make it on a computer, it will come down on the left side with all the mats and everything. And you can see that I've just got one mat that's going to cut, and it's telling me here that it's going to do a pen and then a basic cut. And before you load up your mat into your Cricut machine, make sure that you put the pen into the holder that's marked with an A, and it will draw the pen outline first and then it will do the cut. So you can see that was quite an easy way of doing it by doing two shapes. Now this doesn't always work when you have a shape that's not quite equal all the way around, and the way that I prefer to do it now is to actually use the offset feature. I'm going to delete this one and I'll bring in a shape, and I'll just select this hexagon here. I'm going to make it a bit of a different color so that it will show up on the mat a bit easier. So I've just selected that brown there, and I'm going to drag this out so that it's nice and big for the screen. So instead of copying and pasting or duplicating this shape, I'm going to go into the offset feature. And what I like about this is I don't then have to center everything. It will center everything exactly for me. You can see I've got an outline here all the way around in a blue line on the outside of my shape. And that's because I'm in the positive section here. These little icons here show you a dotted line on the inside of the shape and a dotted line on the outside of the shape. So if I drag this down to the negative area, I'm going to get that line appearing on the inside of the shape. If it's up on the positive side, it will give you a line on the outside. And you can see that this is curved. I don't want a curved line around my hexagon. I want to have it with a right angle or a pointed line where it meets and goes off on an angle. So you can see here, that is the little point here, rather than, I'll change it back to the curve, a curved line. So if you want a softer look, or if you're using a softer edge shape, you might want the curve feature. But for this one, I'm going to have the right angle or the sharp corners. So I can drag this around. I can put this down as almost as far as I want it to go. So as far as that slider goes, it'll go down to -1 inch, but I can use this slider to get it to where I want to put it, or I can type it in myself. So I'm just going to type in an amount, and I can press apply. And there it is, -0.13, gets it fairly close to that edge without coming in too far, and it gives a good sort of patchwork type feel. You can't do this as a stitched line yet. I'm hoping that's a feature that they will bring in eventually. But if I press apply now, what actually happens is I get a solid shape. So you can see it's calling it an offset, and it's a solid shape, but it has put it in exactly in the center of my base layer. So now I'm going to go into this operation up here. I've clicked on Basic Cut, Pen. It's remembered. This is standard, I think, black 0.4 millimeter. That's the one I want. I can now select both of those items, attach them, and when I press Make It, you can see it's telling me to put in the pen, and then it's going to do a basic cut. If you don't put the pen in, the machine will still act like there's a pen in there, and it will sort of do the outline without writing anything. So always make sure you put the pen in, and then it will do the cut. So it really is quite easy to do, but you don't have to stick to just shapes. I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to type in some text. So I'm just going to type in weekend. I'm going to do it all in capital letters, and I'm going to stick with the font that it's just put in here. You can use system fonts with this. You can use Cricut fonts with this. If you have Cricut Access, you've got a whole heap of things to choose from. I'm not going to go into that in this video. I'm just going to keep with Cricut Sans. I'm going to make this fairly large. I'll go back to using that tan color because I think that's good for the screen. I'm going to go back into the offset feature, and you do need to use the offset feature, especially when you're using text. If you duplicate it and shrink it down, you'll never get it to put itself exactly where it's supposed to go. So now to get my writing exactly on top of each letter, I'm going to use the offset tool. I know that I want -0.13, and if I press apply, it's put that inside my letters here. So I think you can see that. I'll just increase this a little bit, and I'll do this again. You'll only see a partial piece of it, but at least this part's going to show. So I'm going offset. I'm going to put -0.13, and you can see it's come in, but it's actually come in a bit too close. So it's a little bit skinny around these areas. I want a finer look to that. So I'm just going to use my slider until I get it exactly where I want it to go. I'm pretty happy with how far apart that is. I can now view this with the sharper edges. If you look in this area here and here, where it dips down into a sharp angle, it will just flatten straight out, and I don't want that look. So for this one, I'm going to have the curved look so that it comes around evenly on all of the angles inside my letters. So I'm going to press apply for that, and of course it's put this in as an offset shape. So now I need to change this to the pen, and I quite like how that looks. And then all I have to do is drag my cursor around attach all of it, and if I send this off to make it, it's going to put it onto a mat. It thinks it's larger. I might have a larger thing than 12 inches. Yes, I do. And I do like to work on things when they are fairly large on the screen, but I do have to be mindful of how big it is when I go to cut. You can see it's 12.05 inches wide. I don't want it quite that big, so I'm going to shrink that down a little bit. It's kept my offset feature. They're both attached together. When I press make it, you can see that it's coming in. It will cut out each individual letter and it will draw the lines on the inside. The other example that I wanted to show you is that you can get this to work on a 12 by 12 piece of paper. What I'm going to do is sort of fool the machine a little bit. I'm going to put a star in, put it on a little bit of an angle, and I'll show some photos in the end of examples of projects that I've actually done this on, and I'll put a link to all the videos of that in the description below. So what I want to do is make a star to fit on a 12 by 12 inch page. I'm just going to reduce the size a little bit. I'm going to insert a square that is going to replicate my 12 by 12 piece of paper. I'm just going to make it white and size it to 12 inches. I'm going to put that on the page so you can see that outlined all the way around here, and I'm just going to send it to the back. So this is just for a guide for now. What I want to do is create a star and then have a line drawn around the outside of it. I've got an example of a layout where I used this exact same technique last year, so I'll put photos of that up, and there's a process video on assembly, but I didn't actually show how I made that star. I'm just going to color this a little bit lighter. I'm going to reduce that a little bit, and this time, instead of putting the pen line on the inside, I'm going to put the pen line on the outside. So now I'm going to go straight to the offset tool. It comes in at 0.25 inches. Sometimes it will remember what you did last, but this time it's actually not doing that for me, so I'm having to adjust it each time. And I want the outline to be fairly close to this, and that looks pretty good to me. So I can apply that, and it's come in once again as a basic cut. You can see up here it's a basic cut and it's a solid star. So if I send that off to make it, I'm going to get a warning, and that means I've got a piece that's too large here. So this is the 12 by 12 square that I put in. I'm just going to hide that, and I'll show you what happens when I send this off to make it. I get a black star and I get one of the tan stars. So I want to make this black star into a line. It's exactly the same process as what I've been doing before. I'm going to click on it over on the elements panel here, or the layers panel. Go into operation, drop down the menu, click on pen. It's automatically remembered that I'm using black and a 0.4 millimeter tip. So let's put that in. Once again, before I do anything, if I press make it now, it's going to put that star onto a mat, the drawn star onto a mat on its own, and then it's going to put the paper one onto a different one. So I need to attach these two items together. So down here I can attach them, and I actually want this star to cut out of my piece of paper that I'm going to put on the mat, because it's going to be a feature and I'm going to layer up strips of paper behind it. And as I said before, I do have a video showing the end result of this. So now if I press make it, this is my mat. I'm just going to reduce that down. So this is a 12 by 12 piece of paper, and I can leave that as it is, and it will cut up in this corner here. So what Cricut does when it sends things off to be cut, it puts the edges of the pieces at the top and the left. Now I can drag that around and I can position it to where I want it to actually cut on my layout. So I actually want this to cut a little bit down and across from where it positioned, not quite in the center, but in this area here. So if I send this off to the machine, what it's going to do is with the pen, you can see here, it will draw this first. So it will draw this outline first, and then it's going to do the basic cut, which is actually this star, and that will cut out of the 12-inch piece of paper. So I'll have the star as negative space, but I will have the pen line drawn around that negative space. You can use this feature on all sorts of different shapes, and I have Cricut Access at the moment, so these are the shapes that you get that are all free. But if you have Cricut Access, you have access to a whole heap of different shapes. So the one that I used for Cosette was this rounded corner with a rectangle, so one corner is rounded and the rest a square. And then I was quickly able to do the offset feature to that, and you can see by dragging this slider around or typing in what you want it to be and you press enter, it will put it in there perfectly. I can apply that, quickly go in, change it to pen, draw my cursor around both of them and attach. It's that quick and easy to do. So this one here, the line is going to draw on the inside of this shape, and on this one here, the line is going to draw on the outside of the shape. I'll put some still shots up now of the examples. I've got 5 examples that I'll share with you, so you can check those out. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I am going to do another tutorial soon on slicing and welding with how I can manipulate titles and other images. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, happy crafting and bye for now.